Hello travelers, I'm Chris, welcome to Lorespire. In this video, I'm going to be showing you our new Aeon Deletionist build. This is a themed build that I believe will fit with the new Inevitable Excess DLC quite well from a role-playing perspective. It has been tested extensively in the base game and is extremely powerful on core difficulty and was effective in my testing even on higher difficulties. The Aeon Deletionist focuses on spells that delete or kill enemies outright, such as Phantasmal Killer, Dismissal, Banishment, and Weird, as well as other forms of crowd control, buffs, and dispel magic. There are timestamps, so you can skip around if you like. Let's get started. To create this character, choose the Overwhelming Mage archetype of the Sorcerer class. This will give us great spell penetration, which when combined with other feats and abilities will render enemy spell resistance absolutely useless against this build. It will also allow us to boost our spell DC once we get to level 6. Next, you'll want to pick Half-Elf for your race, Kindred Raised as your heritage, and Pickpocket for your background selection. And here for your ability points, you'll want 7 Strength, 14 Dex, 14 Con, 12 Int, 10 Wisdom, and 22 Charisma. Alright, and the reason that we're taking Half-Elf Kindred Raised is because we can get up to 22. That's a +6 modifier on our casting stat at level 1. So, that's pretty awesome. For skills, I suggest taking Persuasion, Use Magic Device, and Perception. Put a point into Persuasion and Use Magic Device every level. And on odd levels, when you have a third point, continue putting that into Perception. Now, none of these are absolutely essential, but I do strongly suggest that you at least keep Use Magic Device maxed as you level. Scrolls are just too useful to pass up, especially when you receive such a large bonus to the skill with this build. Now, take Spell Focus Conjuration. Grease is by far the best early game crowd control spell in my opinion, but if you prefer a different school of magic, you can change this. Just do not choose Abjuration or Illusion, as we'll be taking Extended Magic Arsenal for those schools of magic later on. Then, take Arcane as your bloodline. This bloodline will help you to raise your spell DCs, give you bonuses to concentration checks, and gives access to many of the spells that this build wants to use, such as Dispel Magic, Dimension Door, Break Enchantment, and Banishment. It will also allow you to choose 3 different spells to add to your spell book through the new Arcana abilities that you see here. Sorcerers do have limited spell access, so being able to make good use of so many bonus spells is really helpful for the build. As a side note, I would like to say that Dimension Door is one of my favorite spells in the game. It's a lot of fun and extremely useful. If you don't use it, you probably should. Next up, we need to choose a familiar. I suggest choosing the Hare. It's not necessary, but the bonus to initiative is really useful for this build. The ability to act before your enemies is just so helpful when it comes to controlling the battlefield. I think initiative is probably one of the more underrated stats. I myself even did not appreciate it as much as I probably should have until very recently. Here we have the Bloodline class skills, and I don't really suggest taking or using. At the deity selection screen, I chose Atheism. I just feel like Atheism kind of fits what an Aeon is supposed to be. And for alignment, I chose Lawful Good. Now, I feel like maybe lawful neutral would be a little bit better representation of what an Aeon is, but lawful good still represents it well enough, I believe. And we are not actually taking any feats or other abilities to buff our saving throws. So being lawful good will allow us to use Bestow Grace on the Aeon Deletionist. And with the huge amount of charisma that you will have with this build, that is going to buff your saves very, very much. On lower difficulties, it's probably not necessary, but it's what I went ahead and did here. Now for appearance, choose whatever you like. None of this really has any effect on the build. I will just say though that I think that this gray, number 3, and then this dark blue right here, number 56, are the colors that I think look the best. Just my opinion. Okay, now let's take a look at our character card. Okay, at levels 1 and 3, we're taking Spell Focus and Greater Spell Focus Conjuration. This is because spells like Grease and Create Pit are great crowd control spells early on in the game, and they also ignore spell resistance. And early in the game, you won't have a whole lot of spell penetration. So yeah, that's why we're going with Spell Focus Conjurations here. Anyways, at levels 5 and 7, we'll be picking up Spell Penetration and Greater Spell Penetration. In Act 2, you start running into a lot more enemies with spell resistance and higher spell resistances. And the Greater Spell Penetration here at level 7 will also coincide well with Overwhelming Penetration, giving you an even further bump. And from this point on, you won't have to worry too much about enemies resisting your spells once you hit level 7. Okay, now at level 9, we have Spell Focus Evocation. And again, you could really make this any school of magic for your spell focus. I like Evocation and the spells that it gives you, you know, around the middle of the game. So I decided to go with Spell Focus Evocation. But as long as you don't choose Abjuration or Illusion, you're good to go there. Okay, then at level 11, we've got Meta Magic Persistent Spell. Okay, and this gives your enemies a disadvantage anytime they have to make a saving throw against one of your spells. Okay, so whenever we cast Phantasmal Killer or any crowd control effect, really they'll have to roll twice and take the worst result, making these spells much more likely to affect the enemies. It's really an awesome meta magic, one of the best, if not the best. Okay, and then at level 13, we have Meta Magic Heightened Spell, which is also really good. It allows you to increase the levels of your spells. Okay, so you can take a level 4 spell that you like let's say Phantasmal Killer. That's one that we'll definitely be using a lot in this build. Okay, so you can take that spell, and by this time it's already a couple of levels outdated because you have level 6 spells right here. And you can heighten it to become a level 6 spell, and then later on a level 7 spell, all the way up to a level 9 spell to keep it relevant throughout the game. And of course, you can use this heightened spell, meta magic, on pretty much any spell. So it's definitely very helpful. Okay, and yeah, also raising the spell level, for anybody who's not aware, also raises the DC of the spell, which is kind of what we're going for here, high spell DCs. Then at level 15, we have Greater Spell Focus Evocation. 17 and 19 are Spell Focus and Greater Spell Focus Enchantment. Okay, looking at the actual class archetype, the Overwhelming Mage here. Looking at this part of it, the character sheet is pretty straightforward here. You just get 4 ranks of Overwhelming Penetration. Each one gives you an additional +1 bonus to your spell penetration. All right, this along with the other feats and abilities that we're taking with this build will pretty much make it so that you never have to worry about the enemy spell resistance, at least not once you get you know, here past level 7, and especially not once we pick up Mythic spell penetration in the Mythic feats part of the build. Okay, now looking down here, we also get Overwhelming Spell, which allows us to increase the DC of any one of our spells by sacrificing a spell. So you sacrifice a spell and you divide that spell's level by 3, and you get the increase in DC of the next spell that you cast. So Sacrifice a level 6 spell, you get a +2 DC to your next spell cast. Sacrifice a level 9 spell, you get a +3. Pretty much works like that. And that's about it for the actual archetype that we've chosen here, Overwhelming Mage. Now for the Arcane Bloodline, we have explained some of this. It's a great choice because a lot of the bonus spells we get are relevant to the build. Okay, and it also gives us some extra spells here that we get to choose with New Arcana, which is very helpful as our spell selection, or our pool of spells is limited as a sorcerer. All right. Also importantly, the Arcane Bloodline Arcana gives a +1 to the DC of any spell that is affected by a meta magic that is not heightened spell. So you don't get an additional +1 to the spell DC for using the heightened meta magic on it. But if you use only use persistent spell, then you will get a +1 to the DC. So that's definitely helpful. And maybe the most helpful part of this bloodline, or the most helpful two parts rather, are Combat Casting Adept, which gives you a +2 bonus on your concentration checks, and School Power. Okay, School Power allows you to pick a school of magic, and you get a +2 bonus to the DCs of spells from that school. Okay, now I've chosen Abjuration here, and I've done that mostly just for the feel and the flavor. I actually believe that possibly choosing Illusion might be a little more effective from a optimization standpoint, just because more enemies in the game can be affected by your illusion spells than can be affected by your banish spells and dismissal. Now let's take a look at our mythic path. Okay, now first of all, I do want to point out that we do have a lot of gazes here with the DLC and patch 1.2. The Aeon has gone from being able to get 4 gazes to being able to get 8 gazes. Okay, so a huge improvement there. Very nice for the Aeon. Okay, the number of gazes that you have to choose from has also greatly increased. So you can do a lot of different things with the gazes now, whereas they were kind of limited before. All right, but anyways, we're not going to go over each one of these gazes individually because this video is already getting kind of long and that's going to make it way too long. I will just say that Enforcing Gaze save DC, I think, is the only one that's essential for this build. That's going to give you an additional +4 bonus to your save DCs at Mythic rank 10. Okay, and Enforcing Gaze attack is definitely a great choice. Probably the best Enforcing Gaze for most parties, unless you're just foregoing physical damage. That is definitely an excellent choice. Okay, and pretty much all of the other DCs are party dependent. You know, do you have a caster heavy party? Do you have a melee heavy party? You know, stuff like that. So I'll show you that we did get relativity of space here, which I feel like is pretty helpful and should be a really good gaze if it works correctly. I've not had that much time to test it yet. But basically it makes it more likely for you to hit your enemies whenever they have concealment and less likely for them to hit you. Okay, and now anyways, Aeon Gaze, the concentration, that's very effective against casters. Enforcing Gaze, Primordial Magic. This one's really interesting, and I feel like the Primordial Magic support option, because you get 3 options here to choose from, is definitely the best one, as it will allow your support casters to cast 2 spells in a turn. Okay, but if you aren't really using support casters, or you know, whatever, then you may not even want to take this at all. Then Enforcing Gaze, Temporal Jump, which makes it so that your enemies have disadvantage and your party has advantage, is definitely very helpful. And Enforcing Gaze, caster level, you know, adds to your caster level and subtracts from your enemy's caster level. And then Enforcing Gaze, Energy Shield, which gives energy resistances to your allies and lowers the energy resistances of your enemies. Anyways, those are all of the gazes that I picked for this build, and I feel like they're all pretty useful, but depending on what your party makeup is, other gazes may be more important. So just look at them and take what makes the most sense for whatever your party is. The only ones that I would strongly recommend are Enforcing Gaze Save DC and Enforcing Gaze Attack, as this one goes with fits so well with what we're trying to do with the build, and this one here is just really, really good for most parties. Okay, now anyways, let's go ahead and look at Mythic Rank 1. We take Force Reality. That's mostly for role-playing purposes. Also, early on, you may not have as many spell slots to dedicate to Dispelling, and this gives you a way to dispel early without using up your spell slots. All right, at Mythic Rank 2, we also took Abundant Casting here. Now, Abundant Casting is particularly helpful with an overwhelming mage, because the more spell slots you have, the more that you can sacrifice for your overwhelming spell ability to raise the DC of your spells more. Okay, so I mean, it's helpful for all casters to have more spells to cast, but it's even more helpful for an overwhelming mage to have more spells to cast. All right, so anyways, just wanted to point that out. At Mythic Rank 2, we are taking Expanded Arsenal Magic School Illusion. Okay, and that's going to give a bonus, all of our spell focus bonuses to the Illusion School of Magic. And this is great to have right here, because at level 7 you should hit Mythic Rank 2, and then at level 8 you will get Phantasmal Killer, which is an extremely effective, potent spell pretty much throughout the game with the build that we make here. Okay, now Mythic Rank 3, we're taking Improved Abundant Casting. Already explained that. Already explained the Enforcing Gazes. Mythic Rank 4, this right here is actually Expanded Arsenal Magic School Abjuration. Not sure why it's not showing here, but that's what it is. Okay, and with this, your Abjuration spells will get the same benefits that your Illusion spells are getting from all of the spell focuses that your other schools of magic have. Okay, now Mythic Rank 5, we're taking the Undead Bloodline, and that's just because with Abjuration and Illusion, we can affect the vast majority of enemies in the game, you know, just pretty much outright killing them. But I would say that Undead are definitely the largest group that we cannot affect with either one of those schools of magic. Okay, and taking this does allow us to be able to affect Undead with our Illusion school. So that's why we're taking that. Then at Mythic Rank 6, we've got Spell Focus Mythic Evocation, and that's just going to raise up the bonuses that Evocation gets from spell focuses, which also raises up our DCs for our Illusion school and our Abjuration school. Okay, Mythic Rank 7, we've got Greater Abundant Casting. And yeah, we pretty much already explained that. Very nice to have more spell slots for this build. Mythic Rank 8, we've got Spell Penetration Mythic, and once you pick this up, you should not have to really worry about any enemy ever resisting your spells again. Before this, it's not going to happen too often. After you get this, it should, you know, pretty much or almost never happen. All right, now Mythic Rank 9, we're taking Last Stand. The damage at the end of the game gets pretty intense with all of the AoE and everything, and it can be hard to avoid that damage. But with Last Stand, you can keep your main character alive so that your playthrough isn't ended. You don't have to reload anything like that if they take lethal damage. Okay, and now Mythic Rank 10, we're taking Spell Focus Mythic Enchantment, which is mostly just to add more spell DC to our Abjuration and Illusion schools. Okay, and that's it. That's all of our Mythic ranks. Okay, now, I do want to mention 2 abilities that we do not have here. Okay, we do not have these abilities because the version of this character that we are currently looking at was created as a new character for the DLC. Okay, And because of that, we were not able to pick up some of the abilities in the base game, but this build overall is made for the base game as well as the DLC. All right, now looking here, we do not have Profane Ascension, and we do not have Demonic Graft. Okay, Profane Ascension you get from Nocticula as a gift at the end of Act 4 if you accept it. I strongly suggest accepting her gift for this build. Okay, and it gives bonuses to your 2 highest stats, which in our case should be Charisma and Constitution. And so yeah, that would bring us up to 40 Charisma here, which is very nice indeed. And anyways, the other ability is Demonic Graft, which you can get from a demon just outside of the arena in Act 4. Okay, and it's going to give you various bonuses. One of those bonuses is a +2 to your spell DC, which is extremely helpful for this build. Now, it does cause you to lose control of your character if you drop below 20% health, so be aware of that. And if you are playing in Last Aslanti mode, or if you plan to solo with your character at any point, leave the Demonic Graft behind. It's not worth it in those cases. But if you're not on Last Aslanti and you don't want to try to solo anything, then pick up the Demonic Graft. It's going to be a huge help. Now, as long as we're talking about spell DCs, real quick, let's just look at what our spell DCs are. For our illusion spells, we're looking at 45 DC for level 9 spells. Pretty good. And 42 for our abjuration spells, which is also pretty good. For core difficulty, this is actually absolutely phenomenal. You will wreck most of the enemies in the game, including bosses, with these kinds of DCs and core difficulty. Okay, on unfair, it'll still be highly effective. You might not be wrecking bosses with these kinds of DCs, but you should still be effective against regular enemies. Now, these DCs do not include bonuses from our save DC Aeon Gaze, so you can add another 4 there, which gets us up to 46 and 49. And then if you were to throw on the Profane Ascension and the Demonic Graft, we would be looking at 51 and 54 for our spell DCs for Abjuration and Illusion respectively. Now let's go over the spells that I consider essential to this build. First one here is going to be Grease, which we already went over. Next we have Dispel Magic. Then we have Phantasmal Killer, Dismissal, Dispel Magic Greater, and Weird. Oh, we skipped over Banishment. Also, Banishment is included here. Okay, those are the spells that I would consider absolutely essential. Other spells that are nice and helpful to have are, of course, Mage Armor, Shield, Blur, Mirror Image, Create Pit, Haste, Heroism, Greater Magic Weapon, Resist Energy Communal, Protection from Energy Communal, Dimension Door, which I would say is almost essential, but not quite. Definitely a really awesome spell, though. Let's see, Stone Skin Communal, Break Enchantment, Phantasmal Web, Heroism Greater, Phantasmal Putrefaction, Ice Body, Trucing Communal, Iron Body, Sea Mantle, Protection from Spells, Mind Blank Communal, and Foresight here. Okay, and except for the spells that have a target of personal, such as Iron Body and Sea Mantle, you could, of course, have those spells with anybody in the party. Okay, but anyways, I just wanted to go over those spells so that you would kind of know what I like to use and what I consider essential with this build here. All right, now that's going to be pretty much it. If you would like to know more about why I picked the feats that I did in the way that I did, and of course the mythic feats that I did, then check out this video right here that you can see on your screen now, and it explains how to build for absurdly high spell DC. In the video, we can get the spell DC up over 60, and we also have examples of how you can one-shot Demon Lords and Arilu. So go ahead and check out that video. I think you'll love it. It's definitely great to know how to build your spellcasters to have extremely high DC so that they are effective even at higher difficulty levels. All right, I'll see you in that one. This has been Chris with Lorespire. Be well.